Good evening, David McCoy, Ochimo Properties, Real Estate Matters. Well, I have been doing some videos so far, and they have been on frequently asked questions of commercial real estate. And I was kind of looking back at those, and I realized that although they are general in nature, they did tend to be very much, many of them, from the tenant's point of view. And I wanted to do some from the landlord's point of view. So tonight I thought we would talk about how do lease commissions work. And so I want to start with the first most basic piece of information, and that is that there is no set way that lease commissions have to work. And that is a matter of our Code of Ethics for the National Association of Realtors and our local board of realtors is we are not allowed to set prices. Now, that's not to say that an individual can't have a rate that he charges. And it's not even to say, it's also possible that a particular broker for his company might have a commission policy that he asks his brokers and his agents to be in line with. But in general, there is no set amount that goes across a particular market. Each contract is supposed to be separately negotiated. So that means that if you were to contact me and say, hey, David, I'd like you to be the leasing agent for my property, then you and I would have a discussion. You might ask me, what do you charge? And I do, I sort of have I do look at each particular property. I have sort of a range in mind. It sort of depends upon what's going on. And so with me, a lot of it has to do with it might have to do with the particular property, what type of property it is, what condition the property is in, what the market is like there. It might have something to do with my client. Is it someone who I work with a lot and expect a lot of business from? Is it someone I've never worked with before? So there's a lot of things that I would consider. And so generally what I'm thinking about is the opportunity cost. And that is that if you're asking me to work on your project, I would want to be trying to make as much money working on your project as I would if I were spending my time working on a different project. So there would be no real reason for me to decide to choose your project over another person's project if I thought that working for you would mean that I made a lot less money than if I spent that same amount of time on a different project. So that's, I know that is sort of it's a little bit of a nebulous answer, and that is because I have to think about it. I try to sit down and get some idea of how much money I think I'll make if I work on your project and what I feel like I need to make, and then how much time I think it would take to do that. And so I try to set my rates in accordance with that. So I have, a range of amounts that I might charge. I have a project I'm working on right now, which it's a good project, but it is in a part of town where the demand for that type of space is not as high. And the owners of this center, they had just recently bought it. The previous owners had, they had not really done many improvements on the space in quite a while. And I wouldn't say that it was in bad condition, but it did look kind of run down, and it had had a lot of vacancy for a long time. And so that takes a lot more effort to try to get a project like that up and running. So, so we did. So when we talked with the owners about that, you know, we quoted, you know, a pretty high rate. And they were, you know, they were like, man, that seems like a lot. Why is that? And so we explained it to them, and they did understand that. They said, you know, that makes sense. We get that. And so so it is negotiable depending upon the particular a number of factors. Now, there are a lot of other things involved in that. So for me, typically, the commission would then be whatever rate that we agreed to, and it would be times the base rate of rent for that property. So now that may also differ from person to person. You may have somebody who would say, hey, whatever your tenant is writing the check for, I expect a percentage of that amount for the term of that lease. And I don't usually ask, I do not ask for that percentage to cover, say, common area maintenance fees that are over and above your base rent. If the landlord is doing a build out for that client and they're having to add that build out cost over and above their base rent, I normally don't ask to have any percentage of that either. It's just on the base amount. But again, I mean, it might depend, and different people do that differently. So when you're negotiating with somebody about that, make sure you understand that. Make sure you understand what they're expecting. So another thing is that if I have a client and I do a lot of work for them, I might do a different rate for that person, because if we do a lot of business together, I might discount my rate a little bit for him in appreciation for him being a good customer and in anticipation of continuing to do business with him. Sometimes we'll have a situation where I might tell a broker, a client, especially if I do a lot of business with them, that if there's maybe not a broker on the other side of the transaction, that I would reduce the rate. And that's a part also that probably needs to be made is when I negotiate a commission rate, that rate normally includes paying a broker on the other side. So if I am the listing broker for a building or a shopping center or an office, whatever it might be, and there is a broker representing the tenant who is coming in, well, that broker also would be looking for a commission, and that is almost always being paid out of that total commission that I negotiated with the owner of the property. You know, it is rare, I won't say it never happens, but it is rare that a representative for the tenant is being paid directly by the tenant. They are normally going to get paid from that commission that has already been negotiated in the listing contract. So when you're doing a commission on a lease, it's different from a commission on a sale. On a commission on a sale, you have a closing, and the closing attorney cuts checks, and they will cut the commission checks at the closing and give them to the various brokers at closing. But when you are doing a commission rate on a lease, there is no closing. So the commission checks are normally done by you bill them. You bill the client for the commission, and then they will pay it, and then once we receive it, if there's another broker involved, we would also pay that other broker, but we would be getting it from by billing it. I personally normally tell my clients that that I don't expect them to pay a commission until the tenant is has moved in and the tenant has started paying rent. So if there's any free rent involved up front, I normally do not ask for the commission until they are actually getting checks from the tenant. Different people do that differently. A lot of listing contracts say that it is due immediately upon signing. And so if you have a timing issue, that's something you should talk about with your broker as well. And so from my side of the transaction, if you have a tenant coming in and you have a lease, at that point we have already put in all of our efforts up front. So we didn't receive any payments during that period of time. We don't get hourly rates or anything else. The total amount of our payment for that deal comes once you pay that commission. So I want a landlord that when I work with you, I want someone that understands that I'm working, basically giving them all the labor up front free, and so when it is time to pay, I want you to pay. I want to work with people that value what we're doing and want to pay me. If I'm working with someone and they have tons of reasons that they feel like they don't want to pay, or tons of conditions that they want to put into the contract under which they won't pay, I usually won't work with them. You wouldn't give me whatever your product is for free if you were a doctor and I came in and you took care of me and I said, well, I'll pay you later. You wouldn't put up with that. And it's really not fair for you to ask us to do that either. So that is one thing that is important. That is the way that I pay my bills. That is the way that we take care of our families. And so it's only fair that we may have worked with dozens of people that you turned away or that didn't work out and got no compensation for any of that. So that's right. So when we do get that lease done, we do expect to be paid promptly. So that's the way leases commissions work in a nutshell. Obviously, from my various descriptions, you can understand it can be pretty complicated. A lot more can be involved. If you have more questions about that, let me know. I appreciate you watching this. If you liked this video, if you found it to be helpful, I hope you will click like. If you think someone would benefit from this, I hope you will share it. And if you would like to see some upcoming, I hope you will click subscribe. I'm going to continue and do a few more on landlord frequently asked questions. For commercial real estate. We will also down the road be doing some on international real estate. I have plans to do some on multifamily and residential, on rental properties, and on flips. So there's no shortage of things to talk about. If there's a topic of interest to you, I hope you will let me know. I appreciate all of the feedback and the topics. And thank you again for watching. I hope you have a great evening, and I will see you next time. Have a great night. Take care. Bye.